Negative again. Jennifer Bradley stared at the stark result on the pregnancy test, the single line burning into her vision like a cruel reminder of failure. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her luxury Manhattan apartment, illuminating the sterile bathroom tiles. She sighed deeply, setting the test down on the marble counter with trembling hands. 3 years, 3 long, exhausting years of fertility treatments, each month beginning with fragile hope, only to end with inevitable disappointment. The cycle was relentless. Hormone injections 3 mornings a week, daily medications, constant appointments at the fertility clinic. Her body had become a battleground, her spirit a pendulum swinging between fragile hope and despair. At 35, Jennifer had achieved almost everything she once dreamed of. She was a respected accountant at a prestigious Boston firm, her meticulous work and calm professionalism earning her a loyal roster of clients. Behind her slim-framed glasses, her brown eyes often carried a gentle warmth, though this morning, they reflected only weariness. She pressed her palms against the cool porcelain sink, whispering a quiet prayer she had whispered countless times before. "Dear Lord, please bless me with a child." Her faith was her anchor. Every Sunday, sitting in the old wooden pews of Trinity Church, bathed in the colors of light through stained glass windows, she prayed the same words. She had clung to the belief that God listened, that somehow, her suffering was not in vain. From the bedroom came Michael's voice. "Jenny, we have the Johnson Project meeting at 8. His tone was brisk, efficient, the way it always was when he managed both his career and their lives. Michael Bradley was the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. With a sturdy build that filled out his tailored suits, neatly parted dark hair, and a polished smile, he appeared to outsiders as the perfect husband. At his office in the Credential Tower, he was admired as a reliable, charismatic sales director. He looked like the kind of man who had everything: a successful career, a beautiful wife, an enviable lifestyle. But Michael harbored a secret heavy enough to shape their entire marriage. He was infertile. When the doctor had given him the diagnosis years ago, he had buried it deep inside himself. His pride, combined with the fear of how it might affect his promotion and his marriage, kept him silent. He convinced himself it was kinder not to tell Jennifer, to let her believe that the struggle was hers to bear, not his. So, he sat through fertility treatments, smiled through appointments, and carried the invisible guilt that gnawed at him daily. "I know," Jennifer replied, her voice betraying the faintest tremor. She stepped out of the bathroom, her suit immaculate as always, every detail polished as though sheer precision could hold her life together. On the commuter train to her Back Bay office, she buried herself in her planner, trying to summon the focus she needed to face her clients. Work, at least, offered structure, something she could control. Meanwhile, across the Charles River in suburban Boston, her younger sister Amy Carter was opening her nail salon. With platinum blonde hair swept into a high ponytail and glossy red nails gleaming under the salon lights, Amy embodied flash and trend. The salon, though tucked away from the high-profile streets of Newbury, had built a loyal following. Clients adored her bubbly charm and the illusion of luxury she carefully cultivated. But Amy's charm masked something darker, a long-nurtured resentment toward her older sister. Growing up, the sisters' worlds had been shaped by the absence of their mother, who had died when Jennifer was 10 and Amy only 5. Their father had remarried soon after, and their stepmother, Mary, seemed to pour all her affection into Amy. Jennifer received polite neglect while Amy was spoiled, adored, indulged. The imbalance revealed itself in countless ways: lavish birthday parties for Amy, extravagant Christmas presents, financial support for her salon dream. Jennifer had built her life through discipline and perseverance, while Amy had always been handed things. Even now, as she adjusted her makeup in the salon's ornate mirror, Amy's thoughts wandered toward her sister. "Big sister is always perfect," she muttered under her breath. Harvard-educated, well-dressed, living in a Manhattan high-rise with a handsome husband, Jennifer was the golden child, even if Amy never admitted out loud how deeply that shadow haunted her. But deep down, beneath the layers of envy, Amy's resentment had hardened into something dangerous. Jennifer's marriage, too, wasn't the flawless picture the world assumed. On the surface, Their life was enviable: weekend brunches at Stefan's on Newberry, shopping trips to Whole Foods, evening workouts at Equinox Sports Club. But the cracks were there, invisible fissures spreading through the foundation. The endless fertility treatments had turned their intimacy into obligation, their conversations into clinical schedules. What once was laughter and dreams had become silence and tension. And then came the Sunday afternoon that shifted everything. Jennifer and Amy sat at their favorite brunch spot, mimosas glistening in the sunlight. The chatter of other diners filled the air, but to Jennifer it all seemed to fade when Amy leaned back casually and said the words that froze her world. "Hey, sis," Amy said, twirling her straw. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Jennifer blinked, her breath catching in her throat. She felt the glass in her hand grow heavy. She tried to smile, tried to summon joy for her sister, but the knot tightening in her chest made it almost impossible. Across the table, Michael's expression faltered, just for a second, so brief that Jennifer might have missed it if she weren't staring at him. His confident facade cracked, his jaw stiffening, his eyes shifting as though caught. The mimosa sparkled in the sun. The clock on the restaurant wall ticked forward. A moment passed, unnoticed by most, but it would mark the beginning of a chain of events that would unravel all of their lives. Fate. 30 minutes had passed since Michael and Amy disappeared from the hospital room, yet their footsteps still seemed to echo through the sterile corridors of Brigham and Women's Hospital. The sharp scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, mingling with the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Jennifer stood at the window of the dimly lit room, her reflection faint against the glass, her trembling hands clutching the documents Peterson had handed her. Medical records, blood type test results, fertility treatment charts. Each sheet of paper, clinical and impersonal, was a blade cutting into her heart. Together, they formed a weapon, irrefutable evidence of betrayal. "Mrs. Bradley, Dr. Peterson said quietly, his voice steady but heavy with sympathy. "These records can be submitted as evidence in court. If necessary, I will testify as a witness." His words hung in the air, filled with compassion. Jennifer, who had once sat across from him with hope in her eyes during fertility consultations, now faced him as a woman hollowed out by treachery. "Thank you." Her voice was steady, unnaturally so, as if she had locked her grief behind an iron door. That night, when she returned to her luxury condominium in the Back Bay district, silence greeted her, not the warm, domestic kind, but the kind that throbbed with absence. She walked into the bedroom and froze. The closet was bare. Michael's clothes, his cologne bottles, the cufflinks she had gifted him for their anniversary, gone. Only wire hangers clinked together when the air stirred, a mocking symphony of emptiness. On his pillow lingered a faint trace of perfume, floral, foreign, unmistakably not her own. On the desk in his study lay an envelope, with dread clawing at her chest. Jennifer opened it. Inside was a reservation confirmation for the Four Seasons Hotel in Manhattan. He had not even tried to hide where he was fleeing. Beneath it, in the drawers, she found folders of financial statements, monthly transfers of $50,000 wired to Amy's salon. Jennifer's hands shook as she realized, this wasn't just betrayal of the heart. It was betrayal funded, nurtured, and sustained over years. The next morning, a cold rain drizzled over Boston as Jennifer sat in a glass-walled office high above the city. The 45th floor of the Prudential Tower hummed with quiet efficiency. Outside, the Charles River shimmered like molten silver under the overcast sky. "Mrs. Bradley, I'm Sarah Collins, of Collins & Associates." The lawyer was poised, every inch the formidable professional, a Harvard law graduate with a reputation as one of Boston's most skilled divorce specialists. Sarah radiated calm authority. Her navy suit was immaculate, her gaze sharp but not unkind. The gleaming nameplate on her desk reflected the sterile glow of fluorescent lights. "This is a very clear-cut case," Sarah began. On the table between them lay piles of evidence, private investigator reports, time-stamped photos of Michael and Amy entering luxury hotels, captured moments of intimacy in restaurants, and financial ledgers documenting secret investments, hospital records and fertility charts. Jennifer's most personal vulnerabilities now sat transformed into weapons. "Not only do we have medical evidence, but the infidelity involves your own sister." Massachusetts courts will recognize the malicious nature of this betrayal. Case law has awarded substantial damages in similar cases. Jennifer stared at the documents without blinking. Her fingers curled around the edges. 10 years of marriage, 3 years of fertility treatments, endless prayers whispered in church pews, and behind it all, Amy, her own sister. The betrayal ran so deep it seemed to corrode her very sense of family. For compensation, Sarah continued, her tone measured. We can demand $300,000, double the Boston average. For property division, we will pursue 80% of the Back Bay condominium and investment accounts. We will also demand reimbursement of fertility treatment costs, $127,500, fully itemized. Jennifer listened, her chest tight, her mind whirling. She wanted justice, but what sum could compensate for her shattered trust? What number could balance out the years stolen from her life? Meanwhile, in the family's Brookline home, another storm brewed. How could this happen? Mary's voice trembled as she sat in the living room, clutching the Boston Globe. The morning edition blared headlines of the scandal. A prominent real estate executive exposed in a sordid affair with his sister-in-law. The stepmother's face had drained of color. Her teacup rattled violently in its saucer. I raised that child, she whispered, her words more to herself than to anyone else. In her study, Jennifer's father, George, sat with the newspaper folded neatly in his lap. Behind his wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes were heavy with disappointment. A Harvard professor, George had spent a lifetime in academia, shaping young minds. Now, he struggled with the reality that his own family had unraveled into scandal. Mary, he said quietly, his voice cutting through the silence, you spoiled Amy too much. You neglected Jennifer. This tragedy is the result of years of favoritism and imbalance. It was the first time George had spoken the truth aloud. The family photo on the wall, 2 little girls smiling beside their parents, watched silently as the house finally cracked under the weight of years of denial. At Trinity Church that Sunday, Jennifer sat alone in the garden, marigolds blazing gold in the autumn sunlight. She prayed beneath the Gothic arches, her tears falling into folded hands. Reverend Martha, her voice soft but resolute, told her, God sees your suffering, and he will not abandon you. The words seeped into Jennifer's soul like balm on a wound. By late September, all evidence was gathered. Records of Michael and Amy's 3-year affair, hotel logs, room 2112 at the Mandarin Oriental, used over and over again, receipts from Les Sablons for late-night dinners, bank transactions proving Michael's secret funneling of money, even cell phone records, hundreds of messages, whispered phone calls at midnight, photos, videos. The truth was no longer hidden, it was undeniable. When the final confrontation arrived, Jennifer walked into the Ritz-Carlton Emerald Room with unshakable composure. The panoramic view of Boston's skyline glittered in the evening light, but inside, the air was cold, taut with tension. At the table sat Michael with his lawyer James Wilson, Amy with her attorney Linda Parker, and Mary, pale and trembling. Let us begin, Sarah Collins announced, her voice slicing through the silence. The terms came swift and firm, $300,000 in compensation, 80% of the Back Bay condominium and investment accounts, reimbursement of fertility treatment costs, $127,500, and from Amy Carter, damages of $150,000. Wait, Mary cried out, her voice shrill. Amy can't possibly. Enough. Jennifer's voice was ice. The room itself seemed to shiver. You spoiled her all her life. And this is where it led, stealing her sister's husband, faking a pregnancy, trying to destroy me. This is a small price to pay. Mary sank back into her chair, her Chanel suit wrinkling beneath her collapse. The negotiations ended swiftly. Neither Michael nor Amy could protest. The DNA results already revealed Amy's baby was fathered by one of her salon clients, not Michael. His shame was etched across his face, his pride stripped bare. Jennifer picked up the Mont Blanc fountain pen and signed. Her signature glistened wet against the settlement papers. She rose, her words final. This is the end. Never appear before me again. As she stepped out of the Ritz-Carlton, the autumn wind greeted her. The full moon hung luminous over Boston Common, the red maples glowing beneath the streetlights. That night, She returned to her family home. George waited at the doorway, his old professor's hands extended. Jenny. He pulled her into an embrace, something he had not done in years. In his arms, Jennifer finally allowed the dam to break. Tears fell freely, washing away years of silent endurance. In the study, a photograph of two little girls, Jennifer and Amy, smiled from the mantel, frozen in a time before betrayal. Beside it sat their mother's memorial photo, her gentle face captured forever. "Mom," Jennifer whispered through her tears. Outside, the grandfather clock ticked steadily. The autumn night wind rustled the trees. Red maple leaves swirled through the moonlight, falling gently, heralding the end of one season and the beginning of another.